The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everybody, welcome to the weekly Noyantis Usergroup meeting. Today is the 8th of June 2020. Myself and John are your usual weekly hosts. So, as always, if anyone's got any queries or questions, feel free to raise your hand and we'll get the microphones opened. We have been asked in advance of a couple of new users regarding the calendar. So while we're waiting for questions, we might just cover some of the basics on the calendar, just to make sure people are aware of the usage of it and so on. But prior to that, what we'll do is we'll cover updates as usual. So one of the things, I'll just have a look at the user list here, the attendees. I'm just trying to see. Alex is here. Alex, put you on the spot and just open your microphone up.
Hello. Hi there.
Hi, Alex.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Got a bit of an echo back from myself as well, but that's okay. So one of the things Alex is desperately waiting for is a further update to the ReportControl template. So it got some work over this last week, and especially at the weekend actually. So let me just quickly show it. Now this particular area of the ReportControl is really for people who use the browse enhancing capability. In the past, I've said it's not my favorite implementation of the ReportControl, but you can be scenarios where it's required. If you've got thousands and thousands of records and so on, and you want to obviously look at that load speed, so you want it to be page loaded. And of course in legacy, all browsers are page loaded, so you don't have much of a choice. As we said, there's been lots of work on the ReportControl of late. This update, because it keeps getting more things added to it, this update will be released by this Friday. You might see it surface before then, but Friday is its release date. So that is Friday Friday the 12th. So that's good. And the following Friday will be the release date of the new command bars. So basically, all this we're working through the backlog and so on. So yes, they are the two official release dates. So Friday, if not before, for ReportControl, Friday after for the command bars. Let me show you the new change on this. In fact, actually. Before showing it, what I just need to do, just stop that a second. There's a property, not really for you guys to use, it's more for me. I'll show you what it does in a minute. But there is a developer mode, which helps me doing some debug. I'll just turn that off, which of course is its default instance. And we're going to look at the page loaded browse enhancer. So I happen to know that this table has 84 records, and the problem which you were facing before was you would get down to scrolling down the bottom here, and then the scroll bar would disappear because the underlining browse class itself has actually loaded more items than the ReportControl can see. So for example, it's page loaded, but possibly the ReportControl, the Clarion browse could have fitted, let's say, 36 items in its list, whereas the ReportControl, due to font size and so on and so forth, can only fit 29. So you would scroll down, and of course the scroll bar would actually disappear because it's keeping the two in sync. So it's going selecting row 30, 31, 32, so on and so forth, and the underlining browse has all them in there. So it's not loading any more records. So the ReportControl selection bar just gets disappeared. As you can see, that's no longer the case. Okay, so they are kept married up.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's exactly what you're after. This is an ABC example, but that is exactly what you're after, which was good. And of course, it works out the resize. So of course it's 22 there. Now, one of the things we've had to do, because all this heavily relies on a couple of properties. So one called prop line item and one line height, and one called prop items. And both of these are properties of a Clarion browse, be it a legacy or ABC. These are properties. So, bit of background so people can catch up on what actually happens. If you resize a Clarion browse, we've got a Clarion browse here. There you go. Got one. Okay, so we can see it's I've got this particular ID going down 1 to 27. So that has got 27 items in that list. Okay. I'll just take this, pull this over here so we can actually see what we're referring to. Okay, that's got 27. So as soon as it gets to past 27, it goes off and it loads more. And that's just what's happening to the actual queue underneath. Now, the way it calculates the prop items is it takes the height, the height of the control, has a look at the font and any settings which are on your particular lines, and then it recalculates the, just 1 second. Oh, it's okay. Takes the height of the control, has a look at any settings for each one of the lines, and it says, okay, one divided by the other, I can fit, and we'll just go back to the top, I can fit 27 in there. If I resize that, I can fit 14 in, and so on. And that actually causes a reset to the actual browse itself. There's a few tricks which third party use. We use in one of our products where we want to be able to list out the report control, and it's using a page enhanced, a page loaded enhance. What we do there is you manipulate behind the scenes the height of the actual list, and you make it this crazy number height, and you manipulate the line height, giving it basically forcing a equivalent of a file loader browse. Capesoft do exactly the same in their approach with center, so on. So it's a way of tricking Clarion to say, I need more records. So it forces a page loader Clarion browse into a file loader Clarion browse. But you wouldn't be able to get it on screen because, as I say, you physically have to manipulate those values. Now, where does that tie in with this? Well, when it's page loaded, that is actually the Clarion browse that you're looking at here. This on the right. Okay, so the horizontal scroll at the bottom is the report controls scroll bar, but this here is actually the Clarion browse. Now, if it's file loaded, that's not the case. If it's file loaded, because it's got all the content and they're kept in sync, we don't need the Clarion browse, so we completely hide it. But for page loaded, you can't do that. So the trick we do is we keep it there on the screen, we resize it accordingly, and so on and so forth. And previously, you would have seen it resize to the top of the report control to the bottom. We can't do that now because it has to take into account, we're resetting the line height and the items, which is the only way you can say, okay, the Clarion browse, I can fit 35 items in it, but the report control can only fit 24, so I have to manipulate the Clarion browse to say you can only actually fit 24 in now. So I do it by changing the line height and the items to marry up to the report control. Trouble is, you don't get a perfect fit. So I've lined it up to the top of the client area, if you will. The bottom will not line up perfect, and that's because it has to be basically a factor of the line height. So if I was to resize this, you can see it's actually gone worse there, and we'll probably get to one point where it will go perfect in line, that kind of thing. But ultimately, it has to go into a factor of the line height. So that's the only way we can actually do it. That makes sense?
It does. It does. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So we've got that. Not that you'll ever use the dev mode. And if you do, don't come asking for help because it's for me. But if I do turn on the dev mode, basically the template, and I'm only joking obviously there, but the dev mode is very much just for me. And what it actually does here is, as I said, there's the Clarion browse, but instead of keeping it just to the width of the scroll area, it allows it to actually go a bit bigger. So I can see as I'm navigating around what it's doing to the Clarion browse. So I know it's basically purposely. I used to have a load of debug coding and so on, but it's easier when you're debugging to visually have it live.
That's dev mode is when it does that with the browse.
Dev mode will tell it to stop keeping just the particular width there. It normally the highlight bar isn't on there. That's only the width of the actual scroll area, so you don't get to see that. I'll turn it back off in a second, but it's basically you would only see that. We just had a scroll a minute ago, whereas now you get to see the actual Clarion browse. So I can see what's going on in the Clarion browse as I'm working the report control. So I can check it for like the locators. So okay, record 23, and yes, it's keeping in sync. Take it back, and so on and so forth. That kind of thing. So yes, that's just me for developer mode. Normally, the highlight bar is taken off, so you don't see any bleed through of the highlight bar. So that's a prop no bar, if you will. The setting of this the vertical bar, it's only the width, or it could potentially actually be not there at all. Because there's only 10 records, then you wouldn't need the vertical because you haven't got enough to fill the report control in the first place. So the actual the logic in the template would say, okay, the report control can actually go a tiny bit wider because you don't need the vertical bar. So all this is all taken care of for you. So you've actually got what I consider one hell of a sync up in-depth knowledge of this here now. So that's the ABC. I'll quickly show you the legacy in a minute. Bill's just asking, will this work with any font? And is the version uploaded yet? So this won't work with any font yet. There are plans. I spoke to Bruce about it. I spoke to Bruce about it a couple of times actually. It's all good. There are plans to add support. It won't just be for this report control. It's for all of the products to wherever possible, where we can manipulate font settings, then we will do. So we will make them any font compatible, but it won't go in this build. This build's been held up more than enough, so it won't go in this build, but it will go in shortly afterwards. But we're probably going to tackle the AnyFont product by product all as one big set. So I'm going to get all this backlog stuff which I've currently got floating around and we're balancing and juggling. We're going to get that out of the way, then we'll do the AnyFont settings all at once. But there are settings actually in the template to do with some properties, how it recalculates the height. One of which is the line height, which you can see in action. The other is to do with the font. So we have, even though I've said AnyFont isn't supported yet, and it isn't, but we have allowed in the template and in the class for a calculation method of use the font setting instead of the line height. One, like I say, the thing that affects the number of the prop items, the prop line height of the Clarion browse. This is only for enhancers, of course. This element. The thing that affects it is the line height. One of which can one of the attributes of that can be the font being used, of course. So no, it's not officially supported yet, but the groundwork's already in for it. So there's two modes of how it will calculate the items and the line height, one of which will take the font into account. Okie dokie. Quickly show you the legacy one, because that was the ABC. Got one particular funny, if you will. Not quite sure what it is. This has got the developer mode turned on, so you'll see it look a little wider. So, yep, in the enhancer, there's your legacy, and we can see what's going on with the actual true Clarion browse underneath. And yeah, it's keeping it in sync. The only one funny I've got is after a resize, must be one of the properties I'm working on. After a resize, it's losing that. So you can see here, I've got 15 items in my Clarion browse. If I get the items, oh, sorry, no, I've got 10. 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So, which is the prop items I'm just messaging out. So those sync up. So where's 16 come from? And that's basically, it's not refreshed the report control. The Clarion browser is refreshed, the report control hasn't. So there you go. You can see it's gone off. So it's somehow got out of sync, and that's the effect that we were getting. When I go back up, you'll see it start coming back into play. So that is the last funny I've got to work out, so on. And when that's done, the enhancers, the page and browse enhancers, page and file loaded browse enhancer part of the report control has had one major upgrade. And if I say so myself, it is miles better than it was previously. Miles better. So anybody who's using report control and using it, well, anyone's using report control does want some of the new enhancements that we've done anyway. But if you especially be using the browse enhancers, you definitely need the next update. It's kind of a must, really. Okie dokie.
Thank you, Andy.
No problem. I'm sorry for the delay on it, and so on. And as Christy has said, it's hard to plan and so on. So if I give you a definitive date of Friday, you might get it before. And if I sort that that thing out there, I mean, without the resize, I could pass you a beta of what's there. No, actually, I can't. No, I can't, because one of the other things which has gone into this next build, this build seems to have grown and grown and grown, is we mentioned the command bars is having a major optimization to its load speed, and that, as I say, gets rid of actually a couple of funnies as well to do with the loading, and definitely optimizes the loading of the command bars, the initialization, I should say, to quite a factor. So this build of the report control also has the same. So where it's building, not the biggest of report controls, these just take a normal report control, nothing to do with browse enhancing now. But we've got some fields, 1, 2, 3, there's 4 columns, so it's not exactly crazy. But as you've seen in some of our products, some of the report controls, even though we have them in the field picker, some of them hidden, that kind of thing, some of our report controls can have 20, 30, 40 columns in there. So it's the definition of the columns, the defining of them, and the initialization of all the column properties, which there's quite a few properties per column. That is also been optimized in this next build. So you'll see quite well, depending on the number of columns you have, you'll also see a speed improvement of the initialization. Other things, what's in there? Just having a quick look. Bill, again, where are you? Bill, your idea of the inline filter and inline search, I'm going to add the auto mode. So you will have the basically, instead of saying it's always a contains or it's when it opens Bill's mic actually, just in case he's here. Hi, Bill. Put you on the spot.
Yeah. How are you today?
Yes, fine, thank you. So if you remember, you gave us the idea, I think it was last week, regarding instead of just contains or begins with, if we could use wildcards. So that will go into this week's build. Only in a limited fashion. So if you put it in auto mode, it'll detect if it'll default to contains, but then if you, let's say you did AB star, then it knows it will automatically switch to begins with. If you did star AB, it would be ends with AB, that kind of thing. And if you didn't do any, then it would automatically just switch to a contains, and so on. There are plans to further pad it out, but that's the kind of thing you'll be able to do in this week's build. So we've got to start somewhere. So yeah, so that's going in. Not that anybody will use it. Let's go back to our enhancer. I think I've got it on the ABC actually. Where are we? Just run this. There's now an actual new control been added to the screen where you can control the displaying of the group box. Ignore this screen by the way, this is just a debug screen, and hence why I've got buttons and rubbish everywhere. But you can display the group box. That's actually a new window control, part of the template where you can just drop on and it will marry itself up to whether you've got the group turned on or off. So it just makes things a little easier. But if you call the method or you use that button, you can see now that the browser enhancer will take that into account, because basically the number of rows we can load is reduced. So we can see 23 there, we can see 25 without. So it will take that setting into account as well. So you've got a new grouping control. You've got reset fields, just like you have in a Clarion browser. So you can just set which fields you want to monitor, and they will automatically reset the content if they ever change. So you've got reset fields. You've got find blocks. If you're using the track bar, you can see pass it a row and it'll tell you all the blocks and all the attributes of those blocks via a queue. Via this method. So you've got a new method there, you've got an undo manager, and so on. Various new methods, just having a quick look there, various new methods. And I hope, but I won't guarantee it, if we can get it in this Friday, then great. I also want to introduce the drag and drop, but if it doesn't go in this Friday, nobody complain. It will go in the next release, but I'm just not holding up this release any further. So, but I do want the drag and drop to be implemented, but I want it to not be just report control drag and drop compatible. I want it to be Clarion drag and drop compatible. So those who use the calendar, you'll remember one of the examples we have is where you pick up an event out of the calendar and drop it onto a Clarion text pad, a Clarion text control, and so on. And we can detect which event it was you were dragging and interrogate it accordingly, and so on and so forth. So I want this drag and drop to be compatible with other things. So technically you'd be able to pick up drag records from a report control and drop them in a Clarion list or a Clarion whatever you need to drop them in. So the drag and drop is hopefully going in as well. Whew. Okay. Any questions on the report control before we look at other questions? No, that's good. There was one other, but again, this is it's even going to probably after the AnyFont enhancement. But one of the things we have actually got me thinking during all this optimization we're doing, we've done the optimization of the column definitions, so just your standard columns. We've done the optimization of that, or virtually done the optimization of that. But one of the not so much when using the page-loaded browser enhancer, but when using the normal report control, one thing it does is it keeps behind the scenes a shadow copy of the basically a queue of rows. So you've got the actual rows in the report control, and you've got a Clarion hidden queue behind the scenes keeping track of that. My plan is, well, actually, just let me make sure that is the case. Won't be a second. Yeah, we have a hidden queue, well, part of the class, which keeps a sync between the report control roles that you see and what Clarion knows them as. Of course, that comes as an overhead. So if you load 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 records, you're adding them into the report control, so that goes at a particular speed, quite fast, but a particular speed. But you're also adding them to a Clarion queue behind the scenes as well. What we're going to do is remove that requirement. So we're going to get rid of the actual internal queue and just use the actual report control itself. That'll give us so much more power and speed. Never did it in the past because I was trying to work out how to do it. Now I think, subject to a bit of testing, I think I've got a way of doing it. So we'll actually remove that speed, so that overhead. So you should see quite an increase on the report control loading as well. Not that it's slow now, but if we take the Clarion queue out of the equation, it's bound to be faster. Okay. Questions? Lots of attendees, not many questions. No. Okay. Well, we got asked for some of the basics of the calendar, so I'm just going to start on that until somebody asks a question in the meantime. So this is really for the recording purposes, for Ray and Steve. Okay, so we'll have a quick look at the calendar. Let's take a look at this one. Now, I think we actually did it in probably last week's webinar, so I'll do a very, very, very quick look at loading it. The calendar comes with a table and so on and so forth, a couple of tables. Now, the intention when we first shipped the example app was nothing more than, here's an example on how to use a calendar, so let's just compile it and take a look. But it was very much a, this is the calendar, you can use it. Here's some examples I use, and I just created a quick form and a table schematic and so on. And what I've learned over the years, and it's been around a few years now, is people actually use that as their basis, import it and use it accordingly, which is great. Never really realised it would go down that route, but that's a good idea. So if people want to use that, definitely that's that's a good idea. With the later build, I think it was something like 4.13, which was the new build, we switched to doing actually some of the loading for you. So we let's just take a quick look. There's some messages we were doing. This is last week's question we were doing of efficient loading, but yeah, we've basically on this we're using our new example event table, and the new loading is all done via the template. And this is the actual update form. I mean, it looks nothing like the update forms of the examples we have in our applications. So what I might do is actually spruce this up a little further, add a live view of the calendar on there. Some of the things that we've spoke about in the actual user group webinars, which have come in handy for people. So what I might actually do is go to take this even further. So if people want to use this, import it, use it. It's a great starting point. It supports the recurring and so on, should you need it. So the loading. There's 2 points on here. I've got and you saw a message come up there. I've got a date picker. So as the user navigates around date picker, it passes, basically it tells the calendar that it needs more data. And the calendar data underscore load events embed point or method gets passed 3 parameters. One is a start date, one is an end date, and one is a force the refresh, true or false. Now what we do here is you might not, if you're doing the loading yourself, still call that same method, still put your code in that same method, definitely. And basically it handles the efficient loading for you. So we can see here on the date picker, we've got which parameters do we want to pass, and we've got currently selected dates of the whole visible range. Now we're able to run this again. What we mean by that, go into our calendar, we can see that, and this was, as I say, this is some debug from last week's webinar, with the load required for the 8th of the 6th to the 12th of the 6th. And we can see that is currently loaded. If I was to choose, let's say, the 22nd to the 24th, the calendar would know straight away I need more data, because it's only going to load between those dates. So now it's going to load the 22nd to the 24th. So it keeps your loading quite efficient. Now, if I was going to say the 22nd to the 23rd, okay, interesting. Didn't think that would actually reload there. Better have a look at where that better have a look at where that embed pointer's message is, because basically it wouldn't, if I loaded there 22nd, 25th, it's got that data. If I load something in between, like just the 23rd, 24th, it knows it's already got that data and it won't reload. So that's just some debug. We're going to comment that out in a second, but it won't reload those dates because it doesn't need to. You already had them loaded in memory, so it won't do. If you passed a true to it via, say, like the refresh contents method, which calls it with a true mode, then what it would do is ignore the previous date and just refresh the data. It can be handy if you're forcing a refresh for your application, say in a network mode. So you just want to have a look if anything else has been added on the network, by network users, that kind of thing. So that's the first thing to understand is them dates. Now, for our calendar, we've said in here that we're going to load from a view/file. You can do it from a group structure, and it defines you the group structure. You can do it from a group structure, and that is defined for you. Event group it is, part of the class. You can marry it to a list control, and there's an example in the actual example app for it. There's examples for all of these. You can tie it to a queue, which is very similar to a list control, realistically. But your queue might be, say, for example, using Ultimate SQL. So you go and issue a SQL command to grab all the particular data and so on from your whatever SQL database you're using. You bring it locally into a queue. If you've married it to the queue, then what it'll do is it'll monitor that queue for any changes. So if that the queue content ever change, it will refresh the calendar accordingly, saving you writing the code. And last but not least is the view/file. Now what this is saying, okay, we're going to take some table. This is where it will write the actual data IO for you. Going to actually look at an events table, look at a particular key, the unique, everything in the products needs some kind of unique identifier to come back to. So we're going to have that. It's just an auto incrementing number, but it's going to go back to that. And we can do a prop order and a prop filter if we need to. Okay. Now I do provide a tip. There's a little checkbox there to say about loading recurring events. Recurring events, let's leave the example running while we're covering some of this. So what we mean by recurring events is here. We can see this particular event here. Well, let's set up a new one. I'm going to put it there. I'm going to say, okay, we'll put our user group in. I'm going to do it at 4 o'clock. Okay. Noyantis Usergroup webinar. We even choose a bit more like the Noyantis colour. That's a bit garish. Like so. We can give it a pattern. So I'm going to say it's weekly. And that will give us, we'll go every week on a Monday, and there's no end date. Just carry on regardless. Okay, that's the type of attributes you can give it. You can give it other attributes. Supports daily, and you can say what days of the week. Sorry, daily and don't include. You can do weekly, which is what we're going to do. We can do monthly, and we can say either go down the day route or the occurrence route. So it's the 15th of every month, 15th of every 2 months, that kind of thing. Or you can say it's an occurrence and it's always the second weekday of the month, or the second Monday of the month we do something, or second Monday of every other month, that kind of thing. So the permutations are quite good, quite varied, quite powerful. And actually, I forget what the standard name is. I did Google it once. Google has these same permutations, and there is an actual code for it as an industry standard, so it supports those. We're going to go weekly. Every week on a Monday. There you go. No end date. Or you could say maybe it's some car payments and you've taken over 36 months. So you can say, okay, it's every month, and so you got the payment's going to go out on the first of every month, end after 36 months, something like that. Maybe you're doing a payment system, something like that. Or you could just say it ends at a particular date. So now we've got. Where did that go? I didn't refresh. But there's our, better look at that, why it didn't refresh. But there's our user group meeting. Let's have a look next week. And there's our user group, and there's our user group, and so on and so forth. So now the thing to remember here is that it's just one record in your table. So now let's just change that. So I'm going to say I'm going to change all occurrences of it. And I'm going to actually just play about this and say it's every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. About 60 minutes. Okay. Definitely a refresh issue there. Okay. We are using the the webinar demo version, so maybe I screwed something up in one of the previous ones. I'll check that in the live demo. Okay, so there we go. Now, as I say, that's one record in your Clarion table. So the way they want you to do is they load one record, and then if you've got any exceptions to that, you create an exception record to it. So we're going to say the one on Tuesday is starting half an hour later. This is the little demo app just asking this. The events are all there for you to trigger, and you put your own messages and you allow or disallow. It's up to yourself. We're going to say just this occurrence. So now if we load, we can see that one is broken. Now what it's done there is it's loaded the original one and applied its pattern accordingly, as you can see. And then it's loaded over the top of that any exceptions to the rule. And the exceptions to the rule are the original date and time followed by the new date and time. So you say, okay, the exception to Tuesday the 9th at 4 o'clock is now Tuesday the 9th at 4:30. Or if it was to be deleted, e.g. that one, I'm going to say delete. And the book will say, oh, better check. Okay, but what you would do there is you would basically say the exception is the date and the time of the original occurrence of the pattern, and then you don't give it the new one. You don't give it a new one. You actually mark it just as deleted, and that would stop that one from reappearing. So you store exceptions. Okay. The reason I mentioned that is just jump to our recurring. We'll look at the loading of that. It should be set to the file. And it is, yeah. It's got that load recurring events. And then this is where the file tip comes in. So I've created a couple of keys. Well, sorry, no, I think it's just one key. Yeah. Schedule ID, cover that in a second. So we've got a schedule ID, followed by is it recurring, the state of the recurring, if you will, followed by the start date. So it does its loading in two passes, up to two passes. One might be if you are only ever using regular events and they're not recurring, one would be sufficient. If you're using recurring, you'd need two. So let me run it, and I'll show you why. Back to that. Now you remember earlier we said we're going to load from the 8th to the 12th, and we have, and we've got our data accordingly. Now, if I was to load from the 22nd, now I'm loading the 22nd to the 28th. If I was only ever going to do one pass, let's just jump back to Clarion and go off this for the file tip. In the first pass, it's going to load the non-recurring events, which means it's going to use just the start date, load everything between the 22nd to the 28th, and that would get you everything you need. That's quite efficient. So I'm only looking at that. That's all I want. Now, I can't do that for the recurring events because I happen to start that on the 8th, which means you wouldn't pick up the very first record of it. So I need to do a second pass of the table. This is to make it ultimately efficient. If you want to do the loading yourself and you can think of a better way, then that's fine. And please let me know because I'll change mine accordingly as well. But I'm just trying to get it to load efficiently into the calendar here. So the first pass will just work on the dates being provided via the load mechanism, and it will load non-recurring events between that date, between that range. The second pass will only load events that are recurring type. So we go back to our Clarion, we can see here, first pass is non-recurring, second pass is a recurring event. If recurring field is present, and that's where we've got our fields in here. So I said the ideal structure is schedule ID. Even if you're not using multiple schedules, I'll quickly show you what they are in a second, then fine, you just have a blank element in the key, but all of them would be blank, which would be fine. So I would have that as your first element of the key, followed by a recurring indicator. And you have got recursive type, so that's perfectly fine. I would have that. Then followed by the start date. So on the first pass, it can, if you're using multiple schedules, it will take it into account. It will look at all the records which are a recurring type 0, which there's an equate through, which is basically not recurring. Then it can just load on the start and end date, giving it quite efficient loading. On the second pass, it's still going to do for the schedule. I'll mention that in a second. Then it will jump straight to the recurring type, and then it's got the start date, but it won't take the start date bit into the filter for the start. It will have to start basically the start of the file. And the reason for that is I could be looking at 22nd to the 28th of June here, like we are now, but I could have put a recurring event in when Noyantis started. When was that? 11, 12 years ago. Yeah, totally. So you could have a recurring event, no end date, running, every week. So I need to start at the start of the file to make sure that I get all of the recurring events to be loaded. Now it does have some logic in there. If the particular event, I'll just edit one. If the event has got an end date and the end date happened to be back in, 1st of the 1st, 2014, well, it won't bother adding that to the calendar because technically it's a recurring event and so on and so forth, but it ended way before the range that we're looking at. So there's pointless loading it in and taking resources off the calendar because you can't see it. So it won't load that. So it has got some kind of efficiency in there, but basically it's just going to go through all the recurring. Now, remember, it's only one record per each recurring master event. So all of these other occurrences are nothing more than shadow occurrences of just one record. And the record happened to be that one there, which we started today. That happened to the master. As the calendar is concerned, you give it the master, then it actually paints an occurrence of that master at the starting date. You never get to see the actual true master on the calendar. You only ever see the occurrences of that pattern, if you will. Got a bit heavy there. So that's the idea behind the loading. You can join tables in to the loading mechanism. Comes in handy. So let's say you've got in your calendar. Oh no, I can't because it's broken. But basically, in your table, you might have something like a customer ID or a site ID, and you have it in your event table. But on the calendar, you want it to say what the actual customer is. So you can see you've got an appointment at 4 o'clock with Noyantis, rather than with contact, client ID 456. You want it to say the word Noyantis. So there, you can just do your join tables, and you can hot field stuff in as well. As you would, a bit like a Clarion browse. Imagine the calendar as a big browse. And then you just go off to specify the fields. So all of these you can see are linked in, just off the event table. It's pretty regular. I think if we looked at the multiple schedule, that might show the join in. Just let me have a quick look for you. Just making my notes for today, actually. 1 second. Sorry about that. Let's have a quick look at the example here. No? Oh, I thought that would have been a... No? Okay. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll put my notes there. I'll get the notes off this afterwards, but got to do a couple of enhancements to the example app. Even though it's just had a major update, I'll add an example where maybe LinkedIn customers or patients, but like we do in our applications. So you can see the join, and all you would do is you would join in. Where are we? Let's just jump back. Join in your customer table, standard join statement. You know, customer ID equals event. You know, EVE, customer ID, things like that. And then as I go across here, it might be that I don't use location, so I would put the customer name in there, which means as I look at the actual event in the calendar, I could have it come up here, because it takes the notes, the subject, the notes, but it does also have the capability to put a location in under there, which it would automatically put in if it was required to. So I could put in there the actual customer name. So it would be new templates, particular customer, and then also the actual, 1 second. Sorry, I just got some people going. And then the notes of the actual appointment of the event. So that way, again, we're not doing any code, but we're getting the actual content in there. Okay, and you can do attributes. Where are we? Not those. Custom properties, you could do those. You'd use those for the likes of hot fields. And one thing I don't know whether people actually remember or know about is the calendar. Imagine it as one big browse, and you've got all these events. So these are records and so on and so forth. The calendar allows you, memory permitting, of course, to put any kind of number of extra properties against each event. So a bit like Bruce mentioned recently, I don't know if you saw it, regarding his launch of Sequin, and he was saying he uses my table. This doesn't require any of those. I'm not saying that, it's just a principle behind it. But you've got any number of extra attributes. It's entirely up to you what you want to name them and what they're going to store, and so on. And the calendar does exactly the same. So the calendar, against each event, memory permitting, can have any number of custom properties against them. Now we're going to actually use one of those to introduce a new owner system, because we've been asked to implement that. So you're looking at a calendar, it's a multi-user calendar on a network, and they want a restriction that you can edit your own events and your own appointments and so on. But what you can't do is go dragging around other people's appointments. That it's up to them to reschedule their own appointments. So you can see the calendar from an impact point of view, everybody's appointments, but what you can't do is change anybody else's. So we're going to add that. It's going to be the equivalent like an owner, an appointment or an event owner implementation. But that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to use one of the custom properties. It'll be a hidden name, so it won't impact on anything that you do, but that's exactly where we'll store it and so on. We already use this quite a lot. So that's what, if anyone's ever wondered, that's what these are, custom properties, and of course the associated values for those properties. So now I will put in, so that gives oh, that was a staff. So we did say, just let me just run this one. We said about multiple schedules. Here's one I've got here. We've got some staff. In the latest example, I've changed these to just be an ID, like a numeric ID. Previously, they were a string. So the template still has to, for backwards compatibility, and also for future compatibility, you might use GUIDs as your record identifiers. So you've got multiple schedules. So you can say, these are schedules. So you've got looking at 1 day, or maybe you're looking at 2 days, and you've got multiple columns per day. They're called schedules. You can use them for staff, maybe plant or machinery, and so on. Depends on what it is you're physically wanting to paint in the calendar. So you can turn them on, turn them off. They're all permissible at runtime, and so on and so forth. That's why I would have, in my example, I changed it from being a string to just a number, and which is the record ID of these. So you've got a staff ID in this table, and we store the staff ID actually in the calendar. So the schedule ID has to match the staff ID, if you will. Quickly show you what I mean by that. Let's go into this example. In our calendar, we're going to say on the schedules, we're going to create them in an embed point. So the options are, you just don't need multiple schedules, so that's fine. What the calendar will do in that instance is it will create you, it needs a schedule even if you're not looking at anything. It needs, if the calendar had no schedules at all, then the actual main client area of the calendar would be null, and it'll cause you chances at a GPF. At minimum, you get a big red block, but realistically, you're more likely to get a GPF because there is no calendar. You've said, I need multiple schedules, but you haven't given me any. The template, the last version, actually does try and catch out that scenario, because a few people did do that. They would select, go to here, they would say, created an embed code, but then they wouldn't actually create any, and the calendar would GPF, and they say we've got a problem. And it was quite common. It was quite easy to be caught out by that, in fairness, as well. So we have just helped that in the last update, and so on. So your options are, you don't use them. And what I was going to say there is, if you're not using them, the calendar will still go ahead and create you a default schedule. It's just its ID is blank, and that basically means all the events that you load with a blank event with a blank schedule will go on to that, which is its default calendar. Specified in a template, so we can go in the template, and they're always fixed. You do it in an application where you will always have, maybe you've got 4 production lines, so you will have 4 columns per day. So we could just go into here and specify them and say, line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, and that's it. We don't need a table for that. They're kind of fixed. But in our scenario, we are going to say, going to create them in embed code. So it gives you a tip of, remember to do clear view schedules. You add new view schedule with an ID and a name. You can remove some, and you can update them. And if we look in our code here, under schedules, I want to load them in the staff initials. We have a quick look at this staff table, and again, people have taken this as their default within their system, which is great. If it helps, I'll even ship these as TXAs to make them easier to put into your dictionary. So I don't mind in a next update to ship the and it's not TXAs, TXDs I should say, but I don't mind shipping some of these, add them into the build as TXDs and TXAs to help you put them straight into your applications. So loading, it goes through in initials order because it's just nicer to see them in the screen. Let's come off that. It's just nicer to see them in a particular order. So it loads them in initials order, and then there's a little setting on that table to say whether we'll look at whether they are on show or not. And then it takes these parameters. First parameter is That's right. That's good. I was going to say that shouldn't be a long. It's a string. Okay, so it takes 3 parameters. First one is the ID. Now I would be using the staff ID, which comes straight off the staff table. Kind of makes sense because on my event table, I have. Did I call it schedule or did I actually rename it to be staff? Oh, staff. So I did. And so on, but you could have called that schedule ID. But I married it to staff ID to try and give this relationships, if you will. So you're going to give it an ID. Could be a string. You know, if it's GUIDs in your system, fine, perfectly fine. Just needs to be a unique value, followed by a name, which is its long name. So, you know, Andrew Wilton. You can give it a third parameter. Well, the second one is optional. The third parameter is its short name, and that can be like a set of initials. Now, what I mean by that is if you're using, that'll do, the overview system, we can see the long name up here, staff 1, staff 2, staff 3, but it's got some initials, S1, S2, S3. I'll change staff 3 name. So now it's Andy Wilton, Mr. Andy Wilton. It goes down as AW. So you've got the ability to have a long name, nice visual on the calendar, but a short name if you're using it for the overview. And you've got methods to get all these should you need them as well. Okay, and last but not least is the display order. Just in case you needed to add a view schedule, but you wanted it to be displayed second, then you could call it and it would automatically add itself second, and so on. So it saves you writing the code to say, okay, keep one as it was, remove the existing number 2, remove number 3, now add new number 2, now re-add 3, the old 2 which is 3, and now re-add the old 3 which is 4. Gets all messy. So you can just basically give it a display order and it will put them in the right place for you. Last but not least is, in the last example, I've changed all the examples to use the file, where are we? The load from file, which is great. It is really efficient for you and so on. But I did forget previously, it used to load them manually. I think the only manual we left was passing a class's parameters, and that example is still in there. I'm going to re-add an example back in, which is the manual load, which is how we used to have it in the template. But I'm going to re-add a couple of examples back in for you, just in case you don't want to use that file and you find it a bit restrictive and you just want to take over yourself. And we'll put them back in. And basically, it's going to be something along the lines of the calendar event group class, and then we will just go off and set the properties accordingly and insert an event from group, that kind of thing. But I'll re-add an example for you as well, because it was taken out. Hopefully that helps get a couple of the users started on the calendar. So you can, I think the simple one, there is some code in there, but you shouldn't really need to add any code. Oh, we'll just get rid of that because that really wasn't needed. That was some debug. So really, you don't need any embed code. You can just go to the calendar. If you're using something like our example, or well, you can still do it to, even if you're using your own table. It's just our example, our tables, there's buttons in the calendar to do it for you, like so. Okay, hopefully that will help. So that's the calendar. We'll wrap that up, but we have got a couple of other questions on the, where are we? Report control. Okay, let me bring up Roberto. He's got a couple of questions. Oh, before we do, sorry, Roberto, 1 second, just mute it again. Any questions on the calendar or anything we've just mentioned on it? Nope. Okay. Roberto. Oh, it's not there. Okay. Well, just in case he's gone off, I'll leave the microphone open a second. But you're saying report control, trapping hotkey using Clarion.
Got it. Are you? Can you hear me there? Oh, sorry. Hold on. Let me get to the questions. Yeah. I have a hotkey, and I just want to. Do I have to do anything? Do I use the standard Clarion mechanism, or do I have to do anything for the report control? In other words, I have a double click, or not so much a double click, or an alt key, an alt K key, or an alt D key, or something.
And what's it to do? I know it sounds silly, but yeah, what's that to do when you press this Alt key? Is it going to go off and do some code?
And do some and come back, or plug something in a particular, or bring up an edit window, or do some additional checking.
But it's not related to a button on the screen, anything like that, because of course that would just be a normal. Right, I've got you. That's no problems. Okay, we'll go on to just that. I'm in the ABC, but we've got a standard report control there. Nothing crazy, just there you go, that one. So let's say I put on there. You tell me. Give me a keystroke that you want to trap.
Let's just try an Alt D to find out what.
We haven't got just checking. We haven't got Alt D at the moment. No, we haven't. Okay.
An Alt D just to look at bring something up, bring one of the fields up, the name up on a message box. Yeah. Okay. Alt D, tell me, get the record, display the message ID.
Got you. Okay, so this what we're showing now is the same on all of the wrapper templates, as long as it supports keystrokes. So we've got our report control. It could be a calendar, it could be the command bar, it could be anything you like. I'm gonna go onto here. Gotcha. Going slow this afternoon. I'm sure the GoToWebinar does cause this to go slow, because this is a bit of a kick-ass machine, but it definitely slows down when it's on GoToWebinar. Okay, you have last couple of tabs. These three are on all of the products. One of which is keystrokes. So we're going to see which keystrokes we want to trap and intercept. The same can be said for any OCX events. If I need to, and these are case sensitive by the way, but if I need to monitor for a certain event occurring in the OCX, I could specify it in here and it would tell me when it occurs. And the global reference is to do with theme and the language and so on. Anyway, back to keystrokes. So we're going to Alt D, I believe you said, was it Alt D?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Alt D. So I'm going to do, I'm going to drop for Alt D. Now, when I press Alt D, if I look at the report control, there's going to be an embed point called keepers. Keystroke, sorry, not keepers, and it tells me which one it was, because of course it can be many, but it will only be the ones which you've told it to listen to. It's not as though, let's say you want to report control browse and answer, and you're doing incremental locator and so on. It's not going to trigger for every time they press a key. It's only to do with anything you've told it to listen out for.
That's great. That's what I was trying to find. We have where I work we have a tendency to actually do a lot of trap keystrokes to do additional functionality and all in the browsers or the controls. We're converting a number of them to.
Oh, I'm very keyboard friendly. I make sure all my apps are keyboard friendly. So yeah, that's fine. Okay, so we've got that. So I need to know what the columns are. Just 1 second, because I'm not sure. This is my debug app, but what columns have I got? Company name. That's okay. So that will listen, and I'm going to say okay.
Just message it out.
Yep. Message. Company is. Now I need to do the report control class. RC customers. It's just RC. What's the name of my class? Oh, actually, at that point, I could get away with self, but I won't do. I'll make it so we use a class name. A lot of people can be scared of using the self because, of course, it is context sensitive of where you are using it and so on. So we'll do that. That we need to message out. Now we want to get row cell value. Okay, and I need a particular row. I'll come back to that in a second. And I want the column, which is company name. I think it was. Was it? Yep. And that will be my message. Now, to get the row, I need the same class again, so it's going to be our report control dot. I'm going to say I spelled that wrong. Report control dot get current row. Get selected row. Get selected row ID. Yeah.
You have an ampersand in front of the company name. Oh, gotcha.
Yep. So, okay, so basically that should take, get row cell value should take a couple of parameters. Client has decided not to give us a tip this time, but basically, yes, it takes 2 parameters. If we're getting a row cell value, I want what row is it, and that's just the current row I'm on, and I want the cell, and I want that one of it. So let's have a quick look at that. Get row cell value, why is it not that? Get row cell. It is get row cell value, so I'm not sure what you don't like about it. Ah, double T, that's why I couldn't find it before. Thank you very much. Into our normal report control, I shall choose, so it's got a damn decent name, Noyantis, that's a really good name. Alt D, and there you go. Current company is Noyantis Software, that kind of thing. So I'm using get selected row, which obviously is what we're on, and I'm using a fixed because I want to know what the name is, and I happen to have used the fields as my field names as my column names.
That works.
Brilliant. But the key press is true of all the products. Likewise, I'll quickly show you the event, but it's, we might as well, because it's a little tip and trick for all of the products. So go into report control, let's just quickly find an event which would trigger, but I want it to trigger under condition. It's not exactly the norm. There's our report control. I want the event, give feedback now. Definitely not mouse move, that'd be crazy. V-scroll occurs when it's vertically scrolled. So I want to know when the V-scroll event has occurred. Okay, now we're not going to put a message out on, it's really good practice to not put messages out when it's callback events, because it just goes wappy.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to put a long, and I'm just going to change it on the screen. Okay, something like so. First of all, because I've got it in the buffer and I don't want to node, just add that to the screen. This is the Rough and Ready app, so I'm not really bothered about this. So we're going to listen, just like we listen for a key press. As I say, you can use this for every one of the products, but I'm going to listen this time to an event. And the event, if it's still in the keyboard buffer, it was V-scroll. As I say, case sensitive, purposely case sensitive this. I'm going to listen for V-scroll. We're going to have a look at our embed point, and we would have an embed point called event, and that receives the event that you're listening for, just like the keystroke one does. Of V-scroll, and I'm just going to change LB scroll to LB scroll +1. So we can just, as I'm scrolling, I can see it change. Okay, 0. And there's your event speed. 2.
Thank you, sir.
No problem. And you said, got a second question. How do you send a character to the report control? If I want to send a tab to the report control and move to the next field, is that an edit in place field or?
I'm sorry.
Your second question.
Oh, my second question. Yes, I'm sitting in the report control. I'm sitting at a location. Can I send a tab key just to move to our own? I know that there is a, hold on a second, a list get next editable column, but I was just curious about just sending a character to the control while I'm sitting and just moving along.
I don't know whether the Clarion key press would. No, the Clarion key press probably wouldn't help us there. You could try it, but I'm not convinced. When it's in edit in place mode, we're talking here, aren't we? I'm not sure.
Okay, and that's fine. That's why it was a question.
You've got next edit. As you say, you've got no, not that one. Which one did you say you got? Set next edit or get next edit? Oh, I think lost. Hi, Roberto, are you there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes, sorry.
Seem to drop out. There is a get set row cell editable. I'm just trying to see which one did you say you're using to determine the next editable field?
No, I'm not right now. I'm gonna wait for the pieces that you are.
I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna wait for those because basically you will land those new methods that you're gonna do are pretty much gonna do everything that I need. And
did you include a select next editable field? Because if not, then I can hopefully add you a method format, and I can interrogate the internal queue of columns to see which are editable or not, and automatically navigate to that.
That was the part that I was going to look into, but if you're going to do that, I would say that's
wait, and I'll just add it in this for you, because the queue, the column queue has it if it's editable, so I'll know which one you're currently on, and I'll be able to determine what the next one is, and just pragmatically select it for you automatically, so move the focus to it.
Yeah, I'd rather not have focus, because one of the items that I am working on, I pretty much there's only the first couple of fields are not editable. I just put them on the screen to see them, and then the next thing is editable. And I immediately, when I bring up the report control, it's sitting and it's focused on the first field, even though that's not editable.
Right. Okay.
Gotcha. So I want to kind of avoid having to tab through all that's not editable, and I have a whole large report control that only has about 3 or 4 things that you can input. So most of it it's not editable. Most of it
which is quite common, that, to be fair, as well. Yeah, depending on the type of content.
So it's like a large worksheet. You just put in a few values, it calculates everything around, moves everything around, gives you feedback as whether you're doing something that's profitable or not profitable when you're manufacturing, that type of thing.
Right.
So I'll just wait for it.
Yeah.
I'll just wait for it.
Oh no. Yeah.
I'll just wait for the enhance. I'll wait for the enhancements.
The new version. Yeah, no problem.
New version to come, because it's just I'll go work on other parts of the
That's fine.
But
That's fine.
That was it. Thank you, sir. I do
No.
appreciate it.
No problem. So one more question on the report control, and that's all the questions we've got actually. So if anyone's got any more, start prepping them because we're tired of podding. So Antonio, hi Antonio, are you there?
Yes, hi Andy.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Yes, fine, thank you.
Thank you, Andy. I was just wondering about the use of the pop-up menus on the report control. 'Cause I realize it's kind of different, when you're using the report control. So I was wondering how to do that.
The right
like
click pop-up
menu.
menu.
I'm sorry?
Are you referring to the right click pop-up menu, yeah?
Right.
Well, you've got a couple of options open to you on that. Let me just run this. What have we got a right click on? No, there's no right click on there. That's okay. Maybe is there one on there? No, not put one on there. That's a bit lazy of me. Oh, because it hasn't got anything to do. That has. Okay, so you've got a couple of options open. Now,
Okay.
you can, let's just go straight to the basic. There was that one called simple. There you go. There's a menu called, and there's methods for this if you don't want to write it all via the template. There's methods to do this for you. But there's an actual right click section on the report control, just waiting for it. So we'll go across. Right click. So you can build up your right click here, so you can see it's an option or that should say separator, not a separator. Okay, I spelled wrong. But you can give it options like option A with a particular icon. And you can say it's condition. So you want it to always be enabled, or you only want it to be enabled when you're on a row. You can give it to if a variable happens to be true or false, or an expression equals true or false. So you've got to cover if it's a variable, and actually for the variable, if it's an expression, maybe using maybe you got a right click option and you are subject to security. You're logged in, and are you allowed to do this kind of thing? So you could put an expression there. So, but this is where you would add them. So I'm going to add that, and maybe I'll give it a bit more than A. I'll do something like option A, followed by option B. And that is only when you're on a row with a separator, followed by option C. So not exactly exciting, but you can do it via the template. Now there's other options open to you as well, depending on how you are adding content to your screen. And I'll quickly show you those in a second.
Okay.
That's our simple one there. And we've got A, B, and C.
Okay.
Okay, and if we didn't have any on there, then no. Bad example, because we've got content on there, so it's a bad example. To trap that code, you have a right click. You have a header right click. We don't want that one. No. I've put clock.
Oh.
I'm just going to find it myself.
You're missing the I.
Yeah. So sorry. Yeah. I'm here now. It's just easier. Right. Row right click. Okay. That's as it's building them. This is as it's accepted. So it will tell you what was selected, which selection number, on which row, on which column.
Okay.
Yep. So I happen to be on the 4th row down and the 2nd column. As I right click, it would tell me, and I chose option 2, it would tell me it's option 2 on the 4th row down on the 2nd column. that kind of thing. And then you would just put your code in accordingly.
Okay.
Okay, so that's that. I'm not sure what this, I'm just going to take that back out of this, not one of our normal webinars one. I think it's only a testing app, but still. Now, you have got on our screen, dependent. Okay, tell you what, I'll still use our simple, but I'll get rid of them afterwards. Now, as well as the report control, once you've got it on the screen, you've got extra options open to you here. One of which is the likes of update buttons. So same as Clarion, insert, change, delete. You've got insert buttons. Got a view button. You've got a select button. You should have a print button somewhere. A print button. Yeah, usual things, just like you would with Clarion. And you've also got dependent button. What's that? Field picker. Oh, call it a record button. Is it? Yeah, record button. So I'm just going to add one of these. There we go. It's called button A. So of course I can go and put normal code underneath that. That kind of thing. Now that's a normal button, but if I look at its actions, I can marry it to, well, I do need to marry it to the report control. Okay, so that's married there, and I can say add it to the right click and disable when you've got no records, or maybe hide it when you've got no records, and also force a refresh after, and so on. Typical things you would expect on the Clarion template.
Right.
So you can just add a dependent button or a record button. You can have any number of those.
And you can have as many buttons as you want.
Yep.
Okay.
The insert, change, work, delete buttons, or the update buttons. There's our. We right click now. There's our button A. If I put an icon on that button, it would appear up there, and so on. So it does take the icon settings and so on into account. And I press that, and there's my button A pressed.
Right.
Usual stuff.
Okay.
Oh, so you've got that. And that they are probably insert, change, delete buttons. So they're the update buttons you saw a second ago. They have the same settings. Add them to there. And behind the scenes, it creates a queue of what you call dependent buttons. So it will keep them always in sync. So for example, we've got not an enhancer. It's more the inline filter I wanted to do on this. You know, one of these will do. It's fine, but yeah, it will take the conditions into account. So the insert button should always be present, but the change button is, if it's only been selected, you know, a record is selected. The settings you saw a second ago when you was manually adding, it will take all of those into account for you.
Okay.
So, but that's as easy as it is to get the right click options in there. The only one, it won't go in this week's. Don't think it go in this week's build. The thing I would like is on the dependent buttons, which we saw a second ago, it can be nice to have an additional validation of when that button should be available. So imagine if you will. This is a scenario I'm trying to trap in my software. I'm sure other people will come across it in theirs. So imagine, if you will, I've got this here, and I want the insert to always be available, but the change and delete to only be available when I'm on a record. Kind of obvious. That usual. Now let's say I add a child browse at the bottom, which was a list of transactions for this company. Now I would only want the change for the, another set of change buttons for the transaction browse at the bottom, or the transaction report control, I should say. I only want the change button to appear when you're on a record. Perfectly fine. Same with the delete. But I only want the insert of the second browse to be to be basically available if we're actually on a record at the top. What I don't want to be able to do is insert a transaction when I haven't got the actual parent record, the header record.
Right.
So if I had an inline filter on here and we put a filter in place which got rid of the records because they were hidden, then I would want and you had a reset down at the bottom, so the bottom reset itself accordingly, all very good, all automatic. I would want the insert to be disabled, and at present it wouldn't be, because it's one of these buttons which is always enabled because you're inserting a record. So I want to introduce a new extra setting where you can say an optional condition which will control the overriding control for it as well. So that would be, if I'm on a record on if I'm on a selected row of my parent browse or parent report control, then you're allowed to be enabled. But if you're not, then you're not allowed to be enabled, which will stop you getting orphaned records being entered.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
These are general scenario. I mean, Clarion has had the insert change delete buttons around for as long as I've been in Clarion, so a long time. But of course, they still haven't allowed for that particular scenario, and you have to code for it yourself. And then I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to add it to ours. So you can expect to see both on the insert change, the update buttons, and the right click, and so on and so forth. There will be an extra condition which will come into play.
Okay.
Which will be basically a parent condition, which if it's blank, it'll just never generate any code. But if it's not blank, so it'll be under here. So condition, you have a parent condition and condition. Parent condition will just be an equivalent of an evaluate, because I don't know what your parent condition will be. It'll be completely, what you need it to be, and so on. But it will take that optional thing into account.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Andy.
No problem.
Got it.
Okay. Well, we are on time and we are up to date on questions. All the questions, I think we are done. So do expect the release by Friday the 12th of the report control at last. Might be before, but might not as well by the same token. But do expect the update to report control by this Friday. And next week we will cover some of the work of the new command bar update, which will be released next week. Okay, until then, thank you everybody, and I shall see you all next week.
Thank you, Andy.
Bye.
Bye.